Okay, so this next one's called Fuel the Funeral Entertainment. I hope you choke on it.
Man, I grew up Cutoff, Louisiana, down there in Lafourche Parish, about 2 hours or so from here. Middle of nowhere, man, absolutely nowhere. If you drive from my house where I grew up, if you drive about another 20 minutes south, that's it. Into the country, you're at the Gulf of Mexico. There is no more country left after that.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of imagine, man, it's such a small place. There's no music community out there.
Right.
You know, Houma, which is about 30 minutes away, they had a scene for a little while. You know, they had the Brick House, really huge place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, after COVID, the dude ended up losing it, and the building's not even there anymore. It got bulldozed. They had a couple other places. You know, the Intercoastal Club got wrecked after the last storm, but I saw they actually just reopened, so hopefully they start doing things there a little bit. But as far as, you know, where I was from, there was no live music, anything. Maybe Houma, maybe once every month, you know, maybe once every other month, very, very sparingly. So there was nowhere to actually see live music.
Yeah. How long did you live there?
Oh, man, 18 years. Whenever I graduated high school, I moved out of my parents' house about a week after high school graduation. And, you know, bounced around from a couple places here and there. Lived in Houma for a couple of years and moved up here to the North Shore about 3-4 years ago, somewhere like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my wife was originally from up here, so, you know, we were living in two different places. I was living in Houma at the time. My lease came up. I'm like, hey, we just move in with you, you know, and been here ever since.
Yeah. How'd you like home? And it must have been a great change of pace from Cutoff.
Yeah, it was a cool place, man. You know, definitely more to do, you know, as far as, you know, whenever I say there was nothing down there was nothing down there. It was Walmart, man. I remember in high school, we used to just go hang out at Walmart for fun.
That's rough.
You know, there wasn't nothing to do, man. I'm talking about, you know, park your truck in like the Sonic parking lot. People would just hang out at the Sonic parking lot. There was nothing down there.
Yeah.
You know, if you're into like hunting, fishing, you know, they say it's sportsman paradise. It really is. But if that's not really your scene, man, there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
So whenever I moved to Houma, it's, you know, it's a lot cooler, man. There's actual, you know, places you can go check out some music, even if it's just cover bands and stuff. You can still get out. The place where we lived, it was like right behind the big shopping district.
Mm-hmm.
So we were right there. But I tell you what, I love the North Shore way, way more. Covington,
sure.
Mandeville area is beautiful, man. It's in a perfect centralized location.
Yeah.
You know, we're about an hour from New Orleans. We're an hour from Baton Rouge. About an hour and a half from Biloxi.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anything that's coming to town, we're there. It's an hour out of the way. We can go see it.
Sure.
It's an easy spot.
When you were, I'm going to back it up just a little bit. When you were coming up in Cutoff, were your parents big music fans? What did you have to work with at home since there was no live music around you outside the house?
No, they weren't really too into it, you know. Music wasn't really in the house a lot.
Yeah.
My dad liked, you know, classic 80s rock. I remember being like a little kid. You know, we'd go somewhere, we'd get in the truck or something. You know, you'd play like Kiss or, you know, something like that. Motley Crue, Def Leppard. But it wasn't like a staple. Like, it wasn't a big part. It's like,
right.
You know, whenever we're driving, we'll put on the radio. Whatever's on the radio is coming on. That was the only music in the house.
What were you drawn towards, and how old were you when you started to make those decisions yourself? Like, go seek out your own music?
Probably high school.
So it became more relevant in high school.
Became more relevant in high school. You know, elementary school, middle school. I liked what everyone liked. You know, back then, 3 Days Grace was really popular. Avenged Sevenfold, Five Finger Death Punch, Disturbed, Skillet, Cedar. All those guys were really popular. And that's it. That's all I really listened to. I got to high school and I started to really diversify it. Mm-hmm. You know, I got into, different genres of rock and metal, not just, you know, your top 40 hits that's on the radio. You know, people forget, you know, back then it was kind of a pain in the butt to listen to music. You know, you didn't have Spotify or anything. We had Pandora. Pandora, that was just, you know, you can't pick what you want. At least back then, you couldn't pick what you want to listen to. You just put on a station and hope something good comes on, or you had to like look up the stuff on YouTube. But, you know, you couldn't just like open up your phone, pop up an app, and I want to listen to this song by this band with no ads, no nothing.
Sure.
It's a lot easier now.
It's a double-edged sword, I think, because it's so convenient, and that's a plus. But it's changed the way that we consume music.
Yeah.
And because on the radio, you were forced to listen to whatever they played.
Yeah.
So you got to hear different things that you never heard and take the good with the bad, or see some good in things that you may have just written off initially. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And nowadays, like, you know, people might not understand what the B-side is, which was a valuable resource to people that, you know, maybe they bought a single for the A-side and then they found the B-side to be equally as appetizing, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I see it both ways, I guess, you know, but I mean, it's a bygone era. What years are we talking about when you, let's say, what year was it when you made the move to Houma? Because by then you had graduated. In high school, you started finding your own in the way of music, I guess, right?
Yeah, man, so I'm a young guy. Throws a lot of people off. Everyone's like, oh, man, I thought you were way older. I'm 25. It was like, oh, man, I thought you were 35. I'm like, it's not the compliment you think it is. You know? So, you know, remember, I graduated high school 2015, got into high school 2012. Let's see, I moved to Houma. I was probably about 19, somewhere around there. Lived there for a couple of years. I moved up here I lived there for about 3 years. I moved up here when I was about 22, 25 now. Yeah, that math works out.
Yeah.
And I didn't start going see live music until I was 18.
Oh, wow.
So there's nothing down there. You know, bands, they might, you know, come to like New Orleans or Baton Rouge or something, but, you know, my dad was not taking me to New Orleans.
Right.
You know, to go see, you know, some band that he'd never heard of at some club he'd never heard of. You know, my parents were definitely afraid of Baton Rouge and New Orleans.
Yeah.
And, you know, I get it. You know, some areas are a little shadier than others.
Sure.
But I didn't, you know, start going see bands until I was 18. And I didn't know anything about anything. I didn't know where the venues were. At that time, I only knew what the Brick House was, because that was in Houma. I didn't know, you know, like Southport Hall. Back then, the Varsity was really big. They had the Spanish Moon that was really big. I didn't know where all these places were.
Sure.
You know, I would just, you know, go to a place. I'd see a band playing there. I'd go there for the first time and, you know, cross my fingers and hope it worked out, because I'd go by myself.
Yeah.
You know, my friends weren't really... I had friends. I didn't have... You know, I had very tight friends. You know, I didn't associate with a huge group of people. I had maybe 2 or 3 friends in high school.
Sure.
We graduated. They joined the military. They're out, you know.
So square one again.
I'm like, man, all right, well, I guess I'm going to these things by myself. You know, I hope it's in a, you know, safe part of town. You know,
Right.
I've never been here before. Never drove through like a city or anything before. It was new. You know, I was like country bumpkin.
Right,
you know?
right.
The first music thing I ever went to was Warped Tour 2015. I think they had it in New Orleans. That was the first time I'd ever seen live music, and I was hooked. It was so
that's
incredible.
A big way to see live music for the first time.
And man, you know, I remember hanging out. I didn't go to the big stages because there was a bunch of people. I'm like, oh, I don't want to stand 200 feet back to see these bands. I spent most of that day hanging out on the Full Sail University stage, where it's all of the really small artists, and I still remember them all to this day. I don't even think some of them I know aren't around. I saw Bad Sea Rising, incredible. I wish they would have never broken up. I saw Paylaye Royale back when they were... No one knew who these guys were. There was like 20 people standing in front of that stage with me.
Yeah.
Now these guys are touring the world, and that's so awesome to see.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
I remember, as a matter of fact, the coolest thing, I still have it. The guy signed a CD for me. And I'm just, you know, how they set up just, you know, tents and booths everywhere.
Sure.
You know, I'm just walking and by myself. The guitarist from Paylaye Royale sees me from his booth. He's like, hey, you were watching our set. Come over here. Gave me a CD, signed it. He's like, dude, just thank you for supporting us.
Nice.
And that was so killer.
Class.
Yeah. First, club show I'd ever went to. Again, I was 18. It was at the Varsity Theater in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
Islander was coming to town. And I didn't know who Islander was, but Bad Seed Rising was on the bill with them. I saw them at Warped Tour. Loved them. I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I'm going to go see him again.
Yeah.
So those two, and local support band was Ventress. I didn't know who Ventress was. I thought Ventress was a touring band on the tour with them. I had no idea these guys were local.
Yeah.
And if you know the band, they're all such cool dudes. Ben, 12 feet tall, nicest guy in the world. There wasn't a huge crowd that night because, no one ever heard of Bad Seed Rising. Islander wasn't really that big at the time. They were still kind of new. So there was like maybe 40, 50 people there. The guys from Ventress came like, oh, dude, thank you so much for being here. Shook my hand. Oh, man, we really appreciate it. And, whenever that kind of stuff happens, you start kind of realizing like, man, this is really a tight-knit community. Like it feels genuine. Like they're not just trying to sell me a CD or something. Like they actually appreciate you being here, and that's a really cool feeling.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it has a lot to do with why they get in it for the first place.
Yeah.
And you could tell that with your interactions like you're talking about. And when they're performing, their performance depends on the energy from the crowd, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
You could have two different performances from the same band on 2 consecutive nights, and it'll have everything to do with the crowd, nothing to do with them because they're consistent. You know what I'm saying? It's amazing.
Okay, so this next one's called Fuel the Funeral Entertainment. I hope you choke on it.